Welcome to Seizing Valor, where we discover God's path for manhood, one conversation at a time. I'm Joe.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Zack. And I also apologize for how humongous my head appears on the video now.
Well, your face looks incredibly clean and pristine, you know?
I hope so. I'm hoping this camera does not reveal too much of my very imperfect pores.
Someone who hasn't clicked in a couple weeks is like, I don't recognize this person.
He just looks too dang good. I remember Zack being uglier.
No.
Or a little bit more pixelated and less defined. I thought just Harrisburg was just still loading after God's creation. I thought it was buffering. So
Yeah.
Well, I love your new apartment.
Thank you. Everyone, it's just higher detail. I also noticed I feel like my screen looks like green. It looks like I'm in the Matrix movie.
Yes, I thought that too.
Where it's not like full green, but everything's like green tinted.
A little greeny.
Yeah. So, ooh, the red pill or the blue pill, or the periwinkle pill. No one talks about the other pills. What are the other colors?
You got the black pill. You got the white pill. Are there any other pills? The purple pill.
Can I get the orange pill? You know, the DayQuil pill. I'm feeling a little under the weather.
About the teal pill.
Ah, the NyQuil pill.
NyQuil
the even
pill.
better one.
There you go.
But yeah, so yeah, much more high def, everyone. I apologize.
Ow.
I'm gonna work on how close this camera gets to my face in the future.
So about today's subject, I wanted to just preface this before we have today we're going to be talking about men of the New Testament. Specifically, we chose, just like our men of the Old Testament episode, we have 3 men that we decided to hone in on and chat about. And this actually could definitely be a series, depending on our interest.
Yeah. I mean, until we run out of people in the New Testament.
I mean, there's a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of men, a lot of them. One's with names, one without names. Good ones, bad ones.
There's at least more than 5.
At least more than 6, I think, or at least more than 3. Enough for another episode. We are talking about everyday people in the New Testament that were heroic in virtue in their own particular ways. So stay tuned for that after you find
these
out
messages.
About us 3 normal people and how our lives have been going recently.
Couple of normies.
So on that, who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
I think Josh, yeah.
Yeah, I think Josh. Let's do Josh.
Okay. So I had a crazy week. It was like a madhouse. So every day we had some kind of an event, which was nice. So we played a lot of music. We did a lot of things, a bunch of traveling, which was cool. And yeah, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Just different events, mass adoration, retreats, all that goodness. And then I worked in the garage. I put some insulation on the garage doors. Just try to keep it warmer in here.
I thought you hated warm.
I do hate warm, but my guitars like warm.
Oh, good point.
Yes, that's very true.
More for them than it is for me. And then I put like some more soundproofing up, so that like normally there's this blackness right here.
Mm-hmm.
Normally it's white. I have a blanket that's up there. It's a soundproof blanket. Let's put up on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a bunch more foam squares. I'm gonna put all over the back wall and then on the roof, on the ceiling. I mean,
everywhere.
So that was the whole thing. And then what else? Biodegradable foam. What else? Also jamming, lots of funness. Good, some Beatle playing, and had Halloween today, which we didn't really do much because I'm not a big fan of Halloween, or am I a big fan of trick or treating. So we just went over to family house and had some dinner, and then came back home.
Cool. You give any candy to the kiddos?
Yeah, they got it over at the fam's house. And then,
what's the favorite of the consensus for the kids?
Definitely chocolate. I'd say just a regular Hershey bar. The kids love.
Classic. What was your favorite candy growing up there, Josh?
I love like fruit candies, so I'm really big on like Starburst. Well, fruit candies.
Fruit flavored candies.
Fruit flavored candies, yeah. Like Skittles and Starburst and Airheads were like my favorite growing up.
Nice. Joe, what about you?
Reese's peanut butter cup.
Oh, you took mine. That's the same.
But at swim meets, Zach, I would always, this is not chocolate at all, I would take all of those. What was that candy that you just mentioned, Josh? The
Starburst, Skittles.
No, the other fruit candy, like the ones that look like a tongue.
Skittles. Wait,
Airheads.
Airheads, yeah. I would always stack those together. One time I stacked like 8 together and twisted them up.
Oh,
and then just like took me like a half hour to like finish it.
People would do that. Yeah, they would you put them on top and you twist it, and then you get like the mixed flavors.
I was such a mad lad.
Good stuff.
It's like what people do with Pringles now, apparently. You know, those,
you stack
commercials.
Yeah.
Just stack them.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
So we had a tradition growing up where my family would get apple cider donuts, and then we would watch The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, on Halloween.
Oh, classic.
And so that's what we're trying to do. So we actually just did it right before I got on this call.
Nice.
We watched it and had some donuts. But
honest confession, I have not seen the entirety of The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. I've only seen parts, but like I've never seen the entire thing all the way through.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where like you have to grow up watching it, because if you were just to watch it now, you'd be like, this is not good. It's like, especially when I have kids, it's like it's a lot more. It's not adult humor, but like it's like the way the jokes are like geared towards the adults, so they like say like big words that adults understand that kids don't understand. If that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh, that
like
makes
sense. It's been like 20 years since I saw it.
Yeah, like one of the scenes is just like the way that they talk to each other. It's just very like intellectual, which is just funny. Yeah. I can't think of a line, but
now, Josh, you said you were jamming. Do you have that? Because people who are listening, big Beatles fans, do you happen to have that guitar that the Rickenbacker?
Yeah. So my dear friend, who is an incredible musician, he plays guitar, drums, bass, piano, everything. Grew up playing in bands.
Rickenbacker? I barely know her.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, I'm gonna show it to you. I'm gonna take that.
Yes, please. Cut
I
this.
thought Rickenbacker was that guy who made the popcorn.
Redenbacher. I actually have some up on my cupboard.
How many jokes is Zack gonna get out of this whole guitar thing?
Now I wonder if it's the sunburst type, like George Harrison. For anybody looking, this is what it's supposed to look like.
For anybody listening, Joe and Josh know a lot about this stuff, and I know very little. That looks like a sunburst to me.
Oh, let's take a look.
Well, you missed it because you were busy trying to look up the picture. Here,
Oh, it's that one from the Rubber Soul sessions. I like it.
Yeah, it's a 12-string.
Look at that.
Beautiful guitar.
That's about 11 more strings than I can handle.
For anybody listening, this is actually a Rickenbacker. They don't pull their punches with their manufacturing. Every single time that you look for shopping guitars, like in magazines, because they still do that, like Sweetwater or Tillman, or Musician's Friend, none of these guitars have an actual price on their catalogs ever. It just says always call for price.
That's usually a bad sign for the consumer.
Yeah. Like this is the most expensive one that you'll get because they chime like they're great. I have a Rickenbacker bass, which is just every single one of them like has such character. You know?
Yeah.
It can't be replicated.
It's a little different because it's 12 strings, so I can't play it like a regular guitar. But so I can only really do rhythm stuff. But still very cool. Yeah, so I've been jamming with this, having fun doing some Beatles stuff. We build a whole set list of songs we're gonna play, and the goal is to get good enough and maybe start playing places.
Playing places, love it.
Playing places.
Thing's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But other than that, just had a crazy week. I'm still waiting to hear back from the job. Things are looking kind of cool, but either this week or next week. School's going good. I'm in my last class. It's really great. I think I talked about it last week, but it's basically just like I'm just working on music. So every week I have to make a new song, and the guy just judges how it is and tells me what I can improve on it, and then I'm just making up my own website. Needs helping with that. and then I'm done skis, man. It's good. A couple weeks.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
So that's my life.
You graduated in December?
So my graduation is December, but technically I'm done with school the 30th or the 20th of November. So just a couple weeks. 3 more weeks.
Woo, senior week
All
then.
right. We'll do a New Year's grad party. Yeah.
There you go. Sounds good. All right, who's next?
Zach, how was your weekend? Week?
My week's been pretty good. I had quite a bit of time, or quite a bit of things that I was up to. I'm trying to think about earlier in the week. I mean, just a lot of stuff, busy with a lot of stuff with the job. I know on Thursday, I went down to York, Pennsylvania, nice little section down in southern PA, where I spoke at a Theology on Tap, which was very nice. It was a very good setting, very good audience, a lot of awesome people there. I spoke about All Saints Day and All Souls Day and just talked mostly about, with All Saints Day, the idea of, canonized saints in the Catholic Church, but also like the idea that all saints are, or everyone in heaven is a saint technically. And, that's how that works. And the idea of intercession, and praying to the saints and like having relationships with the saints, patron saints, that types of things. And then I also talked about purgatory and the Catholic doctrine of purgatory with All Souls Day. So literally All Souls Day, we celebrate anybody who is not a canonized saint that has died, because we do not know the fate of those souls, so we pray for all the souls. And I just used like an analogy that was mostly like a family. So like we are siblings, like the people in heaven are the oldest siblings, people on earth are the youngest siblings, and the people in purgatory are like the middle siblings. And it would be way too long for me to go into it now, but it was a very nice analogy. It led to a lot of understanding, it looked like, with everyone. Or we used like also the analogy of like, if you're like on one of those obstacle courses trying to like get over a big wall, it's like the saints like in heaven are like on top of the wall, we on earth are kind of like at the bottom of the wall, and then like we're kind of pushing up the people in purgatory, whereas the saints are pulling them up. So it's like that type of thing. It was just a good time. It was good food, good conversation. So yeah, that was fun. Then on Friday I went to Scranton again. Everyone's here is like, he went to Scranton again? Doesn't he live in Harrisburg now? But yeah, I went to a Halloween party with everyone in Scranton. I want you guys to try to guess what I am. I'm not going to be able to like share my screen, so I'm going to see if I can do this like on. There I am.
You were Charlie Brown. I can't. There's a 12 on there. Is there a 2? What is that?
It's a 2.
Oh, what could you be?
Literally everyone.
A pencil.
What? Yes, you are literally the fastest person to get it. Thank you. Thank you. At the party, everyone was the same. Just like,
you had gray graphite shoes.
Are you a minion? Are you a thing too? I don't get it. And then like eventually once they got it, they're like, oh my gosh. And then I did the same thing with my boss today. And I was like literally seeing how like, I thought this was going to be more obvious. I'm obviously doing something wrong. But Josh, you like have the record now for like.
That's awesome. That's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah. All right.
It means you obviously use pencils, and none of these people do.
I am a fan.
I'm a gel pen guy. No.
Ticonderoga #2, and then so for pencils, Ticonderoga's baby, and then for pens,
the mechanical.
The G2s, fantastic.
Nice. But thank you for everyone listening who partook in trying to guess the costume. It was great fun. And in all fairness, though, to the first person I sent it to, the picture was not that good either. So she had a little bit of a harder time because it was hard for me to take a picture of my whole self. But anyway, so yeah, Halloween party. So that was really fun being able to hang out with them. Saturday, I had spiritual direction, which is always awesome.
Nice.
With the priest back in my hometown. And then I spent some time with my brother. We haven't spent some quality time, just the two of us in a while. So we did that that night, which was awesome. And then on Sunday was a little rougher. I had a little bit of a rough day. A lot of minor things happened, but one of the biggest things happened. I fell down my stairs, which is always fun. Or I like fell halfway down my stairs. Luckily, I was able to catch myself with the railing in a way that like I didn't break or bruise anything. Like I didn't hit my head, I didn't like bash my spine or like bruise anything. But what did happen is I got like a humongous rug burn like all up and down. Like you can't see it now, but there's like that my whole forearm is wrapped in gauze right now because I literally like tore like skin like completely off my arms, and so I have a huge gash like going down my arm. I mean, I was lucky it wasn't worse, but it just was one of those things of like there was a bunch of other minor stuff that happened before that I'm just like, oh, it's one of those days. Yeah, and then today was good. Today was weird just because, you know, I go to work. We get holy days of obligation off, and tomorrow is All Saints Day, which is holy day of obligation. So it's one of those weird days where you like, I went from the weekend to only to work one day in order to be off again. So it's like a weird, weird time going in. But yeah, so that's essentially been my week. Yeah, so awesome stuff, awesome things going on. Yeah, just happy to be here. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, what did I do? I last week was filled with quite a lot of stuff actually. Practiced midweek for church because I played over the weekend. Went with my men's group as we're preparing for a conference early December. Men's concert called Freedom Group, finding our freedom in Christ. It's really good so far. Really convicting messages. We just finished our 5th or 6th week now, lest I forget. Friday, went to my parents' place, had some pizza, some za, as we call it, Zack, and had a car appointment. Nothing like terrible, just had to get the oil changed, differential fluid, and I had a problem for about a year where like every time I braked halfway, I heard like a little squeak sound. It was fine, probably like, if anything, a little bit of grinding, a little bit of corrosion, but it wasn't terrible. It was an easy fix.
Just brake pads, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was all set and done. Watched a movie with the folks. Then on Saturday, I went to a bonfire, played some games with some friends from churches all across Connecticut. Great time. Met some new people. What else? And playing with church is always awesome. Yeah.
Nice.
Sweet.
Brilliant. I forgot to mention, guys, I watched Black Adam. Did you guys see Black Adam?
No. I don't know. DC for me doesn't always do it.
Yeah,
Just
it
so
wasn't very good.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't
just so all
recommend it.
over the place. And sometimes, I don't know, they're a little extreme for me in certain areas of like they go all in on one thing. Like the movies are like really like hardcore and about something, you know.
Yeah.
Or like, and all the heroes in DC are always like hardcore about something, like, oh, Superman's like the strongest ever, or at least the way it is in the movies. Like Marvel's a little bit more, I don't know,
Nuanced.
even keel. Now, obviously, you know, not every Marvel movie is a masterpiece, but you know, and at least they also have their like connection thing going. DC seems like it doesn't know what it's doing. So
yeah, I agree.
But-
So I would say if you're in the mood for an action movie to just shut your brain off, you can watch it, but it wasn't that good.
I showed my mother
beating the crap out of everything.
Collateral with Tom Cruise. That's what I watched
That's a good one.
on Netflix.
Very good.
Yeah.
Tom
Nice.
Cruise got my heart.
Yeah.
Sorry, Claire.
Yeah, Tom.
Zach has no movie recommendations. Zach watched the Great British Baking Show before he stopped on this call. That's his thing. It's like my go-to, like when I have to do something while I'm watching television. Like it's like a nice mindless. But
I've seen a couple
like to
episodes.
bake occasionally, so I am interested.
It's very quaint. I would
Yes.
give the show very quaint.
Like if I'm
it's
looking
nice.
for something relaxing, Great British Baking Show.
Yeah, we watched all of the seasons, but we haven't watched this one. We've kind of been like stepping away from TV a little bit, which is nice actually. So we just haven't watched it. But
Yeah.
Heard it's good.
So all right.
Nice. Very cool. So we move
So
into our
speaking of
discussion.
Great and British.
Excellent.
Let's talk about Saints. That wasn't it. Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding. That wasn't a transition of any kind.
Are there any British Saints? I mean, I'm assuming.
For the rest of the episode, I'm gonna face like this way because that joke was bad.
What was the one saint or the servant, the guy who was with King Henry VIII or whatever that got killed?
Saint Thomas More.
Yes, Thomas More. I kept thinking Aquinas, and I'm like, that's not right. That's not right. It's Thomas something. Thomas More,
right.
the lawyer guy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Man for All Seasons. Oh,
yeah.
Have you seen that? That's a good movie.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I will put it. I'll put it in the queue.
I'm a
Or
fan.
My Q, not the Q. I mean, I don't know if it's on Netflix, but
Yes, and today we're talking about holy men from the New Testament.
Yes, we are. So I said saints, but we're talking about all, or just anybody from the New Testament, technically, even though all three of these men are saints in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
But even if you are not on the whole saint train, these are still people from the Bible that you know.
The
that
British
are
baking show.
Yes, and I'm sure they baked a mean. I don't know.
Genoese sponge.
Sure. I literally, there's so many things I could have used as an example there. My mind just went blank.
A meat pie, bread pudding.
Yes, bread pudding. So
I have to say,
yes.
can I just say this? British food is disgusting.
Yes, it is.
Some of it looks good actually, but some of it, I'm like,
the fish and chips. One of the best steaks I ever had was in Britain.
I disagree, and I didn't even have it. I think you're wrong.
Have you ever been to England?
You got to go to the pub I was at.
Well, then Josh is obviously the expert here. He's not tainted by actually knowing what the British food is.
Bad. Well, just like the meat gamey pies and stuff. That's just gross to me.
I think they just have to have, because of I think the climate, they have to have stuff that's really hardy.
Right.
That's kind of
yeah. I mean, I don't blame them. I understand. I get it. I think it's gross.
Just throw a crap ton of everything in there and just throw some bread over the top. That's how we eat our meal.
Pigeon and squirrel. Anyways,
New Testament. We're our wires are crossing here. So New Testament people. So just like with the Old Testament, we're going to go over each. We're going to talk about one manly man from the New Testament, and we're going to talk about what was admirable about them and kind of hone in on one particular virtue of theirs and kind of give some practical recommendations of how you can be like them. So who wants to go first?
Can I go first? Because I'll keep it short. I'll just talk a little bit about him, and then we'll move on. So I chose John the Baptist. Now I remember there's this line in Matthew. It's Matthew 11. I did end up looking it up, and it talks about how they're paraphrasing here, how nobody born of a woman was better than John the Baptist, but yet the greatest in the kingdom or whatever, that line. But I remember hearing that at Mass and just being like, "Wow!" So Jesus thinks he's a pretty good guy. He's a pretty good guy.
He's got the Jesus stamp of
best endorsement.
yeah, the best among humans and the least among heaven. But that's pretty cool. It really stuck with me. And then I love his boldness, his courage. Especially in The Chosen, how a zealous kind of person that he is, who's just so fired up about the preparation for the coming of Christ, the coming of the Messiah, right? Being his cousin, and the cool story of him leaping in the womb and a lot of people say that was the moment that the Holy Spirit entered him and all of that stuff. So it's neat. Yeah, I think I just leaning into his boldness, his courage, and his humility, right? When he leans and says, the whole humility thing. But he's a great guy and a perfect example of what we should be as men: bold, courageous, and humble at the same time.
And he very much embodied that whole idea of the last shall be first, the first shall be last. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. I mean, literally, Jesus comes to him to be baptized. I'm literally, what does that be like? You are baptizing God. I don't know. First of all, it's I don't even know if this is necessary technically, but this idea of he was his cousin, but he knew who he was, and that's just being that humble. I don't feel worthy to do this, and his whole life is about being humble and doing the least in terms of the physical, but the most in terms of the kingdom of heaven, and God really blessed him by giving him that honor. You are the one who is going to, start my ministry, essentially. You are going to christen this mission.
Prepare the way. And so that's just a great example of how we should live our lives, right? So not thinking less. What was the line? Thinking of ourselves less. What's the line? Sorry.
It's not thinking less of ourselves. It's thinking of ourselves less.
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is true humility.
Mixed up. Yeah. And that's fantastic.
And for anybody listening to some of our previous episodes, when we talk about fasting, there's no other saint champion of fasting than John the Baptist.
Locusts
He
and
survived
honey,
on
right?
grasshoppers and wild honey.
Love it.
So, and he wore camel skin or something like that. Very simple guy. So he had very much control of himself as a man. And he used that to great effect. And as Josh said, he wasn't afraid to stand up, literally tell Herod to shove it, essentially, that you're a bad man, shove it. And he got put in prison for that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but he wasn't afraid to do what was right. So if you had to pick one of those traits, Josh, what would you say is the one thing you want people to take away from John the Baptist?
The humility, definitely.
Humility. So what do you think is one way people can be humble like John the Baptist?
Wow.
Run around naked in a camel skin?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think just recognizing the gifts that you've been given and then returning it to him, right?
Oh.
So he was given the incredible power to love and to baptize and to prepare the way. And then he was able to literally give it back to God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that right there is humility, understanding that not using it to grow earthly treasure or using it to grow earthly power or status or success, which he very well could have. He could have started his own thing, having this gift of, followers and all that. But instead, immediately saying, this is the man right here. And even telling his followers, go with him. Like, you were with me, but this is the real deal. So go with him, be with him. And kind of just pointing in that direction. So utilizing that humility as a means of returning the gifts and talents that we were given back to the one.
Giving it to his glory.
Yeah. And he literally did that.
Yeah.
Literally.
Here's a baptism. Here's all my followers. Literally to Jesus Christ. Here you go.
Is why he's the greatest man among those who've been born.
And I know you mentioned The Chosen. I just love that they kind of flesh out that relationship more in The Chosen. I just love that they were cousins,
And that he was, Christ was moved when he, went to his death, essentially. He knew what was happening and how moved him to tears, knowing it would be the last time he'd see him.
Yeah.
Love it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's John the Baptist in humility.
Yeah.
John the Baptist. All right.
Who next?
Joe, you want to go or you want me to go?
Sure, I'd be happy to go. So I chose I chose the Apostle Paul. And first off, before I continue, because I'll go briefly into his history, I love the Apostle Paul. It's such a great example of a faith journey and giving your life to God. So he was born in the dates are unclear, but either 5 BC, 5 AD, and died around 64, 67 AD. So he was a Roman citizen, born in Tarsus, but gave that in itself was a privilege. He had the privileged status of a Roman citizen because he was born there, which saved him from a lot of abuses. And as a Roman, he had a lot of rights that a lot of other people did not, spared him. So there are a few qualities. He was a persecutor. He was a Jew. He's a believer, came to be, and then also he was a prisoner. And I'll get to each of them in a sec. So as a persecutor, he was a Pharisee. Paul hated Christians. And when Stephen was stoned to death, Paul was he watched and approved this. And then he also set out to imprison Christians as well. Before he was converted, Paul saw Christians as this enemy to be defeated. And he believed Jesus was just a man, just a mere man, and he was right to be executed for claiming to be God. And if this one verse in Acts that I wanted to put in, just hone in on, it says Acts chapter 9, verses 1-2. Meanwhile, Saul was still breathing out, because Paul, named Saul, was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. And after actually he was converted, he made people uncomfortable just because that was his history. That's what he was known for. They're like, okay, when's the J going to be up? Yeah. When he was a Jew, before he followed Christ, he actually considered, Paul was considered, a God-fearing, like righteous Jew, but later on he thought of this righteousness as like rubbish compared to being like having your identity in Christ. I could go on, continue more. You can do a whole episode in this. But when he was preaching, after declaring his faith, he started preaching publicly in Europe, Asia Minor. It was always his ambition. Like look at Romans, for example, where Christ was not known. That's where he went and had such passion. That's what I get out of it. His passion, especially, and you always hear about him being in prison. That's like the most inspiring part of this. It had a significant impact because he had a huge impact on ministry, even though he was in prison. He couldn't go visit places because he was in prison to teach others. And so Paul would send other people in his stead, and also forced him to communicate in writing too, as we know. Yeah, his passion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, like if you ever really read Paul's letters, I mean, thanks to Paul, I mean, we have half the New Testament essentially. Like he is the one that like picks up the majority of the narrative, like once, after Christ's death. Like I mean, the other apostles do too, but like he's the one who really goes for it. I mean, it has where most of the letters come. But I mean, if you really read into his letters, I mean, like his passion is really there. Sometimes on the good side, sometimes on the not so good side. Like he obviously expresses like how much he has love for like all of those who are with him, like Timothy, for example, like his companion. But then he gets really like I remember there's then the one section, I'm not sure if it's in Acts or if it's in one of the letters, about how like John Mark, he abandons John Mark, or he doesn't let John Mark back in the group because like John Mark like ran away at one point, and he's like, nope, not coming
not
back
anymore.
And then Barnabas is like, well, I want him back. Well, then forget you, Barnabas, bye-bye. And then eventually they make up. But like it's this idea that Paul is so all in. Like it might get him in trouble sometimes, but on the whole, like it really, I think it inspired a lot of people probably like in his ministry. If those are what his letters sound like, I can't imagine what his actual preaching was like, which I'm sure it really inspired many a Gentile.
Yeah, and he was in prison for quite a while, like in the 35 or so years that he was preaching. I think he was in prison like 3 times. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I heard that he was like such a passionate speaker that he would like yell and like do the whole like really powerful, speaking. Like the public square thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I also like that he talks about being all things for all people at one point. This idea is that he like was able to tailor himself to like be what each of these groups needed to be. I mean, like literally God, I mean, it was one thing all the apostles got sent out to like certain Gentile areas, but like it was one thing to preach to the Jews, like at this space that everyone knew, but to like go out to the Gentiles where it's like they didn't really know what they were getting into. But Paul was able to like take each of their cultures and kind of like preach to them in a way that they understood and like that they could relate to them. Like the Athenians, he'd like speak in high intellectual level, but like down in other like near I think it was Ephesians, like near Ephesus, he would talk about like I love when I think it's Ephesus. I'm sure if I got it wrong, someone will let me know. But like when he talks about like he talks in sports analogies, because of how like the Greek culture was very very physical and like the sportsmanlikeness of because I just read a book about a Christian perspective on sports, or Catholic perspective on sports specifically, but like this idea is that Paul uses that analogy a lot. So anyway, just saying that like Paul was a master of taking the preaching to the person. And I think that's a really, really good trait to have. So, but yeah, super passionate man. Yeah. And
incredible missionary.
So passion, Joe, that's what you want. You want people to get out? Is that trait you want? How do you think a man that's listening right now can practically apply passion?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
In a good way, positive way.
How can a man apply passion into his life, or be more passionate?
Just anyone listening right now. How can they go out and be like, I want to be passionate like Paul? What do I do?
I suppose, I don't know. This is what works for me and might not work for everybody, but I try to think of like what I daydream about, and have that be an inspiration to what I want. Because clearly, if I'm daydreaming of something, clearly like something is like, obviously if it's God-centered and relates to like the gifts that he has given me, that's something that he has put a calling onto my life. It's the type of thing when I daydream of something, I have butterflies in my stomach, and I think that's there for a reason. That makes me passionate, and thus I can do some type of good for another. That's what helps me be loud like Paul was, if that makes sense.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, and I would say even just kind of piggyback off that, like even the stuff that I said with the when you've been given a gift, right? And that's what passion is like you have you love something because you see God in it, whether or not you recognize God is in it. And then that's kind of should direct your gaze and direct your sight. Like, I think about us with music. Like I'm so incredibly passionate about music. And what that does is it just points me to, God within the music to then refocus on giving it to him directly through worship or through, a sacred text. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. We got John, we got Paul. Oh my gosh.
George and Ringo.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there is no Saint George or Saint Ringo in the New Testament. But anyway, so I decided. I mean, I guess maybe going to the opposite end of the spectrum. I know I told you guys one thing, but I'm actually going to do something different, or a person that's different. So going from maybe one of the most verbose people in the New Testament, we're going to go to one of the least verbose people in the New Testament. The person I think is like the perfect example of what it means to be a man, and that is Joseph, or Saint Joseph, if you would be foster father of Jesus. And I know all of these are like typical picks, I guess. These are people everybody know, but I just have gotten such a greater appreciation for Saint Joseph in the last couple years of just what kind of man he really, really was. So first of all, for everybody listening, I want to debunk and I know this has been going around a lot. Lots of people have been debunking this, but anybody who if you look upon a painting and Saint Joseph looks like the nice old grandpa of, it's like, oh, look at the 60-year-old man married to Mary. That is completely ridiculous. This idea that Saint Joseph would be like an elderly man. That Joseph was a young and vibrant man in the prime of his life when he became the foster father of Jesus. To walk down to Bethlehem or even to Jerusalem from where they lived, that was 600 miles. You're not going to walk to 600 miles and then back when you're not in the prime of your life. I mean, without being a young and vibrant person, and also having to take care of and lead someone who's with child. So, and also then carry all this stuff. And the fact that he would have to go after they were in Bethlehem, go to Egypt, so hostile country, that God would send his son into a hostile country with someone who was frail and could not, defend his son. I think just all of it. I mean, there's lots of, it could go on, but this, and the fact that being a carpenter back in the day wasn't just I work with wood. He was essentially a construction worker. Yeah. On top of being a carpenter, he would be hauling the wood. He wouldn't just be making tables. He'd be building houses. That's the type of line of work that Joseph was in. So anyway, strong man's man, just from a physical standpoint. But what I really like about Saint Joseph is that he was a man of action and not a man of words. He did what a man was supposed to do. He didn't talk about it. Joseph has no words in the Bible. He does not talk one time, but he is always seen doing the will of God. Right. So at first, when he finds out that Mary is with child, he decides to do the honorable thing and divorce her quietly, which actually some people might be confused by that because they're like, oh, what the heck? He's just abandoning Mary because she's, she's pregnant, with somebody else's baby. And it's no, that's actually not what we believe. At least, I know in the Catholic Church, we do not believe that was the reason. The reason was that Joseph did believe that Mary was pregnant with, through the Holy Spirit, but he considered himself unworthy to be able to take that position, thinking oh, I'm not capable of, I'm just a humble man. I'm not capable of this position of being the foster father of this child. But then that's when the angel Gabriel comes in and says Don't worry about it.
Don't do
you
it.
got, you got
You
this.
got it.
Like, keep going. And so, and then he immediately wakes up and takes Mary into his into his home. Like that's the thing. Every time he gets a vision from an angel, he's like, he always immediately. He doesn't wait. He didn't be like, what just happened to me? He's like, oh, okay. God said to do this, so off I go.
Yeah.
And so there's that. Obviously, then he leads down to Bethlehem. He's once again man of action. Probably none of this is also going according to his plan. I'm sure he didn't imagine that the Son of God would be born in a stable, or that they couldn't find anywhere to go, or that they'd even have to we have to take this long trip when Mary's about to give birth. All this stuff that happens. It's just not ideal, but he still keeps trusting in God. And so then when Herod goes off to kill all the children to eliminate the king, Jesus as the king. Then he gets another vision that says, you got to head down to Egypt. And I'm sure he's thinking to Egypt, I mean, we're escaping danger, but at the same time, that's not that's safe. But he still trusts God, and he still immediately takes them. He doesn't question it. He just goes. He lives in, hostile country. He lives a poor life, but he literally was the man that taught Jesus how to be a man. Jesus was there day after day for 30 something years before he began his ministry. He was with St. Joseph learning how to be a man. So if that's the man that Jesus learned how to be a man from, that's the man that we should learn how to be a man from. Yeah. And this has been kind of all over the place with what I'm talking about, but
no, it was a good central message, to think about it that way, that God, he honored Joseph's character so much by entrusting him with this huge undertaking, this huge responsibility, entrusting his own son to be taught by Joseph. Joseph had God's trust.
Yeah. And this idea too is maybe it's not talked to often enough, but this idea is that Joseph was married to the most perfect woman in the history of existence in the version of in Mary, literally the most virtuous and perfect woman. I'm sure she was beautiful as well. And he was married to her, but she remained a virgin for her entire life. And Joseph literally was able to respect that, and be this valiant man that was able to control himself, and just be able to honor that, and to honor and uplift Mary in her mission. He was so much to the side too. That's the other thing too. He knew the mission wasn't really about him, and he just kind of uplifted and supported that, but also knew his role, and once again was able to do the will of God. God's will was that Mary would be a virgin the rest of her life, and that's what, and Joseph respected that, and still was an amazing husband and father nonetheless, and just a valiant, amazing man. Tradition says that Saint Joseph died probably just prior to Jesus's ministry, or the start of Jesus's ministry. So he didn't get to experience his son's ministry, but he was also spared of having to see his suffering. But yeah, so this idea that Joseph was the one who was essentially preparing him for what was to come. I mean, obviously God his father as well, but on earth, God entrusted the teaching of how the teaching of Jesus as to how to be a good man was in the hands of Saint Joseph. Just what a blessing that must have been, to just be able to spend day after day with Jesus and Mary, two of the greatest people to ever walk the planet Earth. Just how much that must have been amazing. It was probably also a lot of pressure in the fact that they did not live a prosperous life. They were poor their entire life. So I'm sure that was stressful on Joseph, but he was so rewarded in that life. I don't know. So anyway, long story short, everyone, what I want people to get out of St. Joseph, there is the humility in the sense of John the Baptist, but what I want everyone, the two big things that I think really go together about St. Joseph is that he was a listener. So he did not speak, he listened. And therefore he was granted words directly from God a lot of the time, visions from angels, because he listened. He was open, he was open to the word of God. And then he did it. He acted on it immediately. So I know that's maybe not one trait, but listening on the word and acting on it. So that's so being open to hearing that prompting and then having the courage to act upon it. So that's kind of what I want people to get out of St. Joseph. So in a practical way, how do you do that? I mean, the biggest way is just spend some silent time in prayer. Just shut everything off and just spend some quiet moments with Jesus and just listen. see what he has to tell you. Even if you don't hear anything immediately, just carving out that space to be just open.
Yeah.
And then being ready and pray for the readiness and the willingness to be able to do as you hear. So that's what I got on St. Joseph. Do you guys have any other additional comments or anything?
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Great. Yes, there you have it. Some three men to emulate, some good traits to reflect on, and some good practical ways to utilize them to
Battle your life.
your life and your faith and all that goodness.
Bettel, I don't even know her.
Oh, I was going to say better. I don't even know her.
All right, gents. Shall we
Close out?
close out?
So here it comes, everybody listening. Here comes the tag. Here it comes.
Drum roll, please.
Boom. So if you really like what you hear, then first you should keep listening again and again and again every week for the rest of your life. But two, you should share this with everybody that you know, or at least the people you think that would get something out of it, or something amazing out of it, or that would like it. So you can find us on YouTube or Spotify. Seizing Valor, that's our name. Hopefully you know that. You can also follow us on Instagram in terms of social media if you want to see what we're up to and how things are going. Yeah, check out that Instagram. You can interact with us. You can talk with us. You can send us prayer intentions, questions, comments, anything you like, I guess. Any sort of words via our email, seizingvalor@gmail.com. And yeah, so we look forward to you listening, for you joining us again and again, and for the other people that you will bring, hopefully. Yeah. Oh, and always remember, smash that like button. Oh, and hit subscribe and leave comments and bolster this video with all of the things that you can do with your mouse. There. And your turn, Joe. Take it away. Prayer time.
Let's bow our heads, fellas. God, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much for these other gentlemen that really inspire me personally to be listening to you, to be on fire for you, God. And thank you all for the listeners who are either hearing us for the first time coming into this, maybe even they're hearing your voice for the first time, or they've been listening to you for years and years and years. I pray for these messages that they get more and more to new listeners' ears. I pray for this message of humility, that we would be more and more like John the Baptist, and that our passion, like Paul, it would echo in every one of our relationships with other people, and our ability to listen would be magnified, Lord, just like Joseph, just like who raised your son, Lord. Each of these three men are a wonderful representation of how a man should be, and how we in turn in 2022 and beyond should be, Lord, and speak to us, God. I think that's a really important message, that we just turn off all the noise of this world, God, that can flood us with incriminating and horrific messaging, God, as we saw in our previous 2 episodes. Thank you, God, for this day. And I pray that you would just give us perspective, God. And thank you for Seizing Valor. In most precious and holy name, amen.
Okay.
Thank you all for attending this discussion, and we will see you all next time.
Adios.
Peace out, Girl Scout.